Okay, we have 11 present and 1 absent. The next item is our Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to ask Deputy Matt Erickson if he'd come forward and lead us in the pledge, and then if you'd please remain standing after that for a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, I'd also like to thank this evening. We had some entertainment before the meeting by the Ravenwood Chamber Orchestra, and they just did an absolutely awesome job, and we appreciate those entertainment times of our arts in our schools. So thank you very much, Ravenwood, for being here this evening and entertaining everyone. Our next item is item of particular public interest, which is our public comments section. This evening we have some speakers lined up to speak. We'd ask that you have 3 minutes each, please. And our first speaker is Danielle Coons. Please state your name and your address and your topic that you're going to speak about.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Daniela Coons. I live at 132 Cavalry Drive in Franklin, Tennessee. Dear School Board Chair, board members, dear Superintendent Golden, the month of October has been declared Child Health Month nationwide since 1928, and it has been also recognized by a proclamation of our governor here in Tennessee this year. October Child Health Month points to the many pillars which contribute to the well-being of our children, like physical activity, healthy nutrition, healthy lifestyle in general, environmentally safe spaces at home and in schools, and toxin-free products for children, etc. I am taking this opportunity to thank the Williamson County School District and the school board members for working towards safer and healthier schools for our students. We in Williamson County are very blessed with all the beautiful new schools which have been built to accommodate our booming numbers of students enrolling in our county. Every little improvement does greatly matter, and it makes good ripples far and wide, reaching all students, teachers, school administrators, and others in our learning facilities. It is my vision that also my drafted new suggested district-wide policy for a yearly 15-minute short environmental training session for teachers, school administrators, and school employees, which will help to protect the health of all children and teachers and others who must spend much time in classes and schools, will be considered and adopted soon by our district. Resources to make the suggested policy work are already available through the American Lung Association, who has offered their assistance to you in support. There would be no need to reinvent the wheel, as you can see from the following listed resources. Kindly asking of your consideration and support in this for the students and our teachers' health. Thank you. I wanted to recognize a few students who have come all the way from Nolensville in support of this. Thank you so much. Good evening.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Judy Salon.
Good evening. My name is Judy Solon, Franklin, Tennessee, and talking about another health issue, healthy school hours. Did you hear the big news in California last week? If you didn't, I'll explain. It just became the law that by 2022, California middle schools must start no earlier than 8 a.m. and high schools no earlier than 8:30 a.m. The law. To quote a colleague of mine, these leaders recognize that they have the authority, responsibility, and moral imperative to protect adolescents from school start times that are scientifically proven to harm teen health and safety. And it's not just California. States and districts across the country are finding ways to operate schools at safe and healthy hours, or they're at least talking about it. Now, I'd like to say I really like Superintendent Golden's new themes for our district. In fact, they're a perfect fit for this topic. So I'll explain. If we put students first in all decisions, we must look to change our schedules that currently harm student health and well-being and increase their risk of car crashes and sports injuries. If we increase our capacity for empathy, we must consider what it is like to wake daily 2 or more hours earlier than we're naturally supposed to wake from a deep sleep, and then try to drive, learn, and deal with complex social and academic pressures. Empathize because even teens with the very best sleep habits are still chronically sleep deprived, and this is mostly due to 2 things. First, teens experience a temporary change in their own biology, and combine that with early school start times, and they're sleep deprived. And these 2 things are both completely out of their control. But school start times are in your control. If we seek to minimize interference to a student's ability to receive instruction, we must recognize that starting school later improves adolescent academic performance, decreases tardiness and absenteeism. And these benefits are even more pronounced for students coming from a lower socioeconomic background, making this also an equity concern. We shouldn't and must not live in isolation. We can get help from others who have expertise and experience in changing school hours, free help, I might add. There is a proven process to follow. We can collaborate with stakeholders within our community and even with surrounding counties to find a way to operate school at safe and healthy hours. It can all be done when we decide to put students first. Thank you, and sleep well.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Tina Fritz. Please state your name, address, and what you want to speak about, please.
Tina Fritz, and I live in Franklin, Tennessee. It's in regards to the reading material for Brentwood Middle School for 6th grade. The book is called Artichoke's Heart, and it was offered as a reading choice at Brentwood Middle, and it was found in the library. And the online reviews do not reflect what is actually in the book. The main character is obsessed with being a size 2. She's considered overweight, and she's embarrassed because most girls her age have a gynecologist and a prescription for birth control pills already. She mentions a classmate, and I'll quote, "KK was drunk, falling down, puke your guts up drunk." And then a mean girl tells her, "Martha Pitts, AKA Martha Tits, has the most sought-after breasts at Spring Hill High School." And then another quote is, "Everyone knows you're just Kyle Cox's fat screw, and he will never date girls like you." And this is reading material for middle school, 11 and 12-year-olds. And I don't know if you're aware of it, and I don't know if it's in other schools, but it was definitely in Brentwood Middle School, and the principal's reply was, he's going to have to see if it needs to be removed. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our public comment section this evening. Our next item is the approval of the agenda. Anyone like to make a motion to approve the agenda? Motion to approve, Mr. Welch. Anyone like to second that? Ms. Cleveland seconds the motion. Any further comments or questions on it? Okay, I see none. You go ahead and record your vote, please.
Your vote is 11 yes, 0 no.
Thank you. Then we move on to the approval of the consent agenda. Anyone like to make a motion for the consent agenda? We have a motion from Ms. Garrett. Anyone like to second the motion? And we have a second from Mr. Fiskus. Any comments, questions, discussions? Okay, I see none. If you go ahead and record your votes on that one, please.
Your vote is 11 yes, 0 no.
Thank you. When we approve the consent agenda, we approve the September 16th school board meeting minutes. We approved board policies on second reading, 1.2021 Code of Ethics, 4.603 Promotion and Retention, 4.6051 Credit Requirements for Graduation, approved recommendations for field trip fee requests. We approved the 2021 budget timeline, and we approved the Community Bible Church of Williamson County lease on Longview Elementary School. Our next item is communications to the board, the superintendent's report. Mr. Golden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did want to thank everyone for coming here tonight and participating and listening to our board meeting. We finished a really good first quarter just last week, and I'm very proud of our teachers and our students and all the support folks who work to fulfill our mission. And I want to thank everyone for that. Related to that, our board had a retreat a few weeks ago, and one of the items that was discussed was just making sure that we remain focused on that mission. And so at the work session, I mentioned to the board that we're going to make sure that there's always some discussion of the academic efforts and the academic interest of our district, even though from a process standpoint, to a large extent, what you all vote on is budget items, policies, those kinds of items that are really important to the governance, but it's important for us to remain focused on our goal. So I thought I wanted to let everyone know that we are going to spend some time at each work session talking about that. Another item that we talked about at that time was athletics and, of course, the arts. It was neat to see the orchestra and listen to the orchestra perform just before the board meeting. For those of you who are watching this, you missed out on a treat, and I would encourage folks to find ways to go to some of our events. It's really unbelievable the talent and the skill that our students have in that context. As part of that also, we talked about club sports, and just wanted to make sure everyone knew that we are going through the process of working out how best to communicate with our students and those club sports that exist in our county. There are a number of sports that Williamson County doesn't actually run, doesn't manage, because they're not TSSAA sports, but many of our students participate in those. And I wanted to make sure everyone knew that we're trying to find our way to get our arms around finding ways to celebrate our students and make sure that all those good things in our community are celebrated as well. To that point, I think I just saw some students walk in who are members of the 4-H honors group. Did I notice that group from 4-H walk in? So I wanted to acknowledge your presence. 4-H is part of the UT Extension Service, and the Williamson County government supports that 4-H program. So thank you all for coming to see how our board does business. We're very excited to have you related to that. Want to let you know that this is not on the agenda tonight, but at the work session, the board discussed the rezoning proposal and actually the zoning proposal for the new middle school that's being built on Henpeck Lane. And that also is projected to have some impact on some elementary and middle schools south of Henpeck Lane as well. So we have 2 meetings scheduled to discuss the zoning proposal with our community. That's October 29th at 6:15 p.m. on, at Oakview Elementary School's cafeteria. And we're going to have another meeting November 7th at Thompson Station Middle at 6 p.m. So I'm going to repeat that once, and we're going to publish this. Of course, it's already on our website as well. October 29th at 6:15 at Oakview's cafeteria, and November 7th at Thompson Station Middle, the same location. So we're excited about that. We are going to ask the board to vote on that rezoning proposal in November, and that is because the school's opening in the fall, and we want to make sure there's a committee together to decide on a name as well. So that's our proposed timeline for the board. With that, I want to introduce you, if you don't already know her. Carol Birdsong is going to come here and give us some student and staff spotlights.
Thank you, Mr. Golden. And just a quick announcement, we are having internet issues in the back, so we are not live streaming like we would normally be live streaming. We cannot get that signal out. However, if you're watching on WCTV, she's not on.
I will say, not only did we have internet trouble, Carol's voice was not being broadcast either.
Okay, so we have internet issues. We are not live streaming, but we are broadcasting live on WCTV. So that is Comcast and through Charter as well. So here we go. We are going to start with perfect ACT. So Mr. Kydell and Michelle, you will come up. First of all, this is Michelle Q. And Michelle received a perfect ACT composite score during the July testing period. So Michelle, just step to the side because I'm sure we'll want to get a group photo. And now let me introduce you to Parker Kasowitz. So Parker, come on up. Parker also received a perfect ACT composite score on the July test. So if you want to get a group picture, Michelle, come on back over there with Parker and Mr. Kydell and let everybody take your picture there. So. All right, very good. Congratulations to you two. The next honor goes to Franklin High School, and the boys golf team won the 2019 TSSAA Division I Large State Championship. Team members are Harrison Akers, Eli Cleveland, Griffin Cochran, Jack Morris, Eric Schneider, Bradford Smith, Joseph Stanley, Cooper Wilcox, Jack Wilcox, Sam Wilcox, and Connor Williams. Their coach is John Whipple. Congratulations to all of our students and staff.
Mr. Golden, you have anything else?
No, sir, that is my report.
Thank you. Board members, for the communications from the board chairman's report, just to remind everybody about the Tennessee School Board Association Annual Conference. That's at Opryland, and that is in November. If you please get with Rebecca Hagan if you are interested in going to that. I'm not sure the cutoff date. It's got to be real close. All right, well, we'll find out. We'll get you in there. They want you there. All right, our next item is new business. 2019-2020 school board budget. The first one on that is general purpose school fund amendment of $15,000 donation for robotics equipment. Mr. Golden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Staff recommends approval for accepting this wonderful $15,000 donation.
Would anyone like to make a motion? We have a motion from Ms. Emerson. Anyone like to second that motion? We have a motion from Mr. Fiskus. Any comments or discussions? Great program. All right, we have a recommendation from the director. If we go ahead then and record our votes, please.
Your vote is 11 yes, 0 no.
Thank you, Board. The next item is general purpose school fund amendment on a transition grant. Mr. Golden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are recommending approval of this amendment to some of the grant money we received that we use for student support services in the transition program to fund a transition teacher and a workplace readiness specialist. Recommend approval.
Anyone like to make a motion on this? We have a motion from Mr. Cash. We have a second from Ms. Durham. Any further comments, discussions? Okay, we have the director's recommendation. If you go ahead and record your votes on this one, please.
Your vote is 11 yes, 0 no.
Thank you. The next one is general purpose school board resolution intercategory transfer for health services. Mr. Golden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Leslie Holman, our CFO, is recommending intra-category transfer for these funds. We recommend approval.
Anyone like to make a motion for this one? We have a motion from Mr. Welch. We have a second from Mr. Hall. Any further discussion, comments, questions? Okay, I see none. You have the director's recommendation. If you'd go ahead and record your votes, please.
Your vote is 11 yes, 0 no.
Thank you. The next one is General Purpose School Board Resolution requesting additional 20 special education teacher assistance positions. Mr. Golden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Due to some needs with IEPs, we've determined, and actually kind of knew right near the tail end of the budget process, this would likely happen, that we need more teachers' assistants. We've projected out 20. Our hope and expectation is that will see us through to the end of the school year, but the reality is you never really know as students are coming. So we recommend approval for this use of fund balance money.
Would anyone like to make a motion on this one? Okay, we have a motion from Ms. Cleveland. We have a second from Ms. Emerson. Any further comments, questions, discussions? Let's see, first is Mr. Welch.
Jason, can you speak to the number? The 20 obviously is not, a small number. Normally when we're hiring a additional math teacher or science teacher or what have you, it's one or two additional. In this case, it's 20. Wonder if you could expand upon that of why we're bringing so many at one time.
Sure. There are a number of reasons, and we may get the Human Resources Department through Vicki Hall to add to it, but every student who has a disability that affects their education either gets an IEP or a 504 plan. The IEPs address substantial needs with students, and they are driven by the team meeting and determining what services a student needs. So part of that often includes teacher's assistants, and there's really a variety of uses for them. Sometimes a student needs a teacher's assistant throughout the day to be with them depending on their needs. Sometimes they need a teacher's assistant at certain times for particular services during the course of the day. What our IEPs have determined is over time, over the course of the summer with growth, with new students coming on, with IEPs developing that might not have been there in the past, that across this district of 41,000 students, we do have that need for up to 20 more. And it's in part an anticipation of what we're going to need in the future. I'm giving you a pretty detailed answer. Here's another element to it. Our early child program actually has students come into the program the moment they turn 3. A parent can choose to send their child when they turn 3 years old, and often those students within their IEPs need those services as well. So we do know that from time to time there will be growth with people moving in or with students coming in that context. I'm going to give you one other fact. We're still short on teachers' assistants from a staffing standpoint. What we're trying to do with this budget line is to acknowledge that the need is there, and we continue to search for teachers' assistants in earnest to help fulfill those requirements we have with IEPs.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wimberly?
My question was answered. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cash?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Golden, we've surpassed the amount that the federal government will give us.
Oh, yes.
How can we, go after them to get this money, since it's mandated that we take care of every child that comes into the school system?
Well, I can speak generally. Then I'm going to invite Leslie Holman, our Assistant Superintendent for Finance, to share some of the details about how we receive funding for students with disabilities. Our total budget includes approximately 2% federal. Largely, the federal money is to serve students with disabilities. I'm speaking generally, and Leslie may be able to give you some more detail. The state also has a program to give us some additional fundings for high-need students, but the reality is with every one of those funding sources that we get either from state or federal, our county commission and our taxpayers ultimately here locally bear the lion's share of all those funding items. So there are myriad elements of that budget where we get pieces of funding to support these students, but ultimately, if you look at the budget as a whole, it's and Leslie, correct me if I'm wrong, it's close to 60% of our total expenditure for students is actually from local funds.
Mm-hmm. You want me to say anything
Sure.
else?
Yeah.
We also get some federal funds for them, but the federal funds aren't based on the needs of our population. It's more based on our population, not the needs of the students that we're serving under that. So, and that number is not growing. We might get a little bit more each year, but we get a lot more students that have needs that we need to fulfill through these services and stuff, and it ends up coming out of the local share.
There's a phrase that's almost become a proverb when we go through the budgeting process with a county government that is our funding body, unfunded mandate. And in this case, it's not truly unfunded, but the funding is limited, is not enough for us to do everything we need to do.
But that still doesn't answer my question. How can we,
Yeah.
as a board or a body or staff, start pushing the envelope on this? Because, you know what, I know our county does very well as far as financial, and we have all the tax base in the world and whatnot, but we as tax-paying citizens pay in for this, and because we're in a wealthier area, we don't get it. That's not fair, and it's not fair to our students and the additional students that are left with teachers, especially with IEPs and early childhood development and whatnot, where they need more attention. So I don't know, maybe a resolution to the governor or something like that. Maybe we can put our heads together and come up with something.
Let us do some brainstorming on that. Traditionally, the way we push for that is to ask the county for funding. There have been times, kind of anecdotally, where there's been a particular item facing the legislature that we've gotten involved with county government to make a request. There are also some state organizations. The BEP is a phrase that's often discussed. It's the basic education funding process. There's a lot of discussions about the fact that it's never been fully funded, what it would mean if it was. Every item has a state ratio for how much they fund. One of the classic examples is nurses, that the state funds based on 3,000 nurses per student. I mean, per 3,000. Sorry, one nurse per 3,000 students. Yeah, we'd be fine with that, right? If I hadn't flipped that. And because that's an easy one for folks to grasp, that we have a whole lot more nurses than one nurse for every 3,000 students. We have at least one in every school and sometimes more, largely because of our special needs. So let's do some brainstorming over that. I'll talk to some of our county leaders as well about their discussions with the folks at the state level.
Thank you, Mr. Golden.
Thank you. Mr. Galbraith?
My question was answered, thanks.
All right. Mr. Wimberly?
It's my observation that Williamson County does an outstanding job working with students with disabilities. It's also my impression that this board, I won't speak for the board, is very enthusiastic and appreciative of the good job that we're doing with students with disabilities. I hear people talk to me, tell me their personal stories on this topic, probably anything else that I've heard. And sometimes there's a breakdown in communication. Sometimes, there's a different way to address an issue. But I can't think of a single occurrence when at the end there was anything less than satisfaction. I'm also under the impression that one of the reasons that people move into the district is because of the good work we do there. So I say thank you for that, and let's keep up the good work.
Thank you. Mr. Welch?
Not to belabor the point, but to sort of piggyback on what Rick was saying, also want to make sure to point out, and again, I don't want to speak for the board, but I do think we're all in agreement that as we start talking about the costs that are involved in special needs students, should also say that we feel very blessed to be able to educate these children. They are wanted, they are cared for, and we are very happy to have them as part of our educational community when we look upon them. So this is a very positive thing that we are able to take care of and educate these students. Just to sort of build on Dan's point too, I do want to point out that as we sort of looking at the lack of federal dollars and lack of state dollars that we do receive. Not to take this off on a tangent, but to go back to the voucher issue, that you can cross the Williamson-Davidson County line, and as a private school, you can get a voucher worth twice as much as what the state spends here in Williamson County schools. And those private schools, there is no obligation at all to take those special needs students. They can discriminate against them, unlike a public school system like ours, where we actively welcome them in and we do the best that we can for them with less than half the funding that we get from our state. So something to think about, especially in light of a vote that occurred and is now under FBI investigation for impropriety that caused it to pass. So just wanted to sort of add that, as I thought it was appropriate to this particular discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I don't see anyone else who would like to speak at this time, so we have our motion, our second, and our director's recommendation. If you'd go ahead then and record your votes, please.
Your vote is 11 yes, 0 no.
Thank you, Board. The next item we have is the 2020-2021 school calendar. Mr. Golden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you all know, we, through our memorandum of understanding with the Williamson County Education Association, have a committee that reviews the calendar, and it has representatives that include the central office folks, Williamson County Education Association teacher representatives, parent representation, and actually even Franklin Special School District sits in on that calendar committee discussion. It has been a tradition, I'm not sure how many years, maybe not a lot, but it's been a tradition to ask a representative from the WCA to come up and describe their perspective on the proposal that's before you related to the calendar. And so with that, I will have a few more comments after Carrie Vaughn presents, but Carrie, if you would come up and speak for the WCEA.
Thank you again, Board, for allowing us to be part of this process through collaboration. As Mr. Golden just mentioned, we do have a calendar committee that is formed every year, and we come together as a think tank to think of all the things that have worked in the past, possible things that might be different in the future, and look at every nook and cranny of things that we could do different to improve the academic success and achievement of our students. It's important that as we look at the calendar, we look at what's worked in the past. I think it's very prudent of us to look at what's worked and be very careful as we make any changes in the future. With that being said, we use the PLC model, which in the education world we call it the professional learning community. And in a business situation, you might call it a shared decision process. And in that process, on our side, we have 5 teachers. We have an elementary teacher, 2 middle school teachers, and a high school teacher. And then on the school staff side, we have our professional development coordinator, we have our middle school, high school director, our elementary director, and we have a PTO president. And as mentioned before, starting last year, we have a spokesperson from our Franklin Special School District that we all come together and think as a team and look at the calendar. I want to talk about a couple things to the public, for everybody, that you may not think about when you think about the calendar and what the process involves. Number one, we think about the academic success of students, first and foremost. But with that being said, you have the continued education of teachers as well. We have 5 days that we embed in our calendar to provide professional development for teachers. So we try to put those in places as well that make sense to be educational for our teachers. For example, if you front load them and have 3 or 4 at the beginning of the year, doesn't make much sense. So we try to spread those out throughout the calendar. In September, the board has the option of giving us parameters. If there's any specific parameters you would like the calendar committee to look at, we take those at that time. This year, we did not have any specific parameters from the board. So in the past, as a custom, we think of this. We try to have as many 5 full days of instruction as possible throughout the calendar year, meaning students are in school 5 full days if possible. Once we look at that, we look at the holidays and the situations where there's not going to be a case where every week's 5 days. So we try to put the shortened weeks at the most prudent time for educational purposes. This calendar that you have before you, we've done a very good job of doing that, I feel. And I'm going to let Dr. Webb talk about those specific things here in just a moment. One thing we think about is break time as well. Teachers do vacation time, and we have to have a healthy amount of instruction time versus time off for teachers and staff. I'm going to think big picture versus small picture here for just a moment. We all like breaks, but it's important for us as a committee to think about all stakeholders. While one family, you may have a student that's going on vacation, another student may be at home unsupervised, and other situations. So a break for one person may be a great thing, and a break for another person could be a hardship. Same thing for our staff. Our classified staff, who are paid by the hour, do not get paid for the days that we're not in school. Now, if you look at the total calendar, we have the exact number of days. So they're getting paid the same amount. The days that they're paid may be different. So, for example, if you have a month where you have 2.5 weeks off or 3 weeks, you have cafeteria workers, TAs, that if they didn't budget appropriately, that's kind of a hardship. So we also look at those things. So it's much more than just the academic calendar. We look at our staff, our teachers, and all those different things. And some people may not think about those hardships as you're thinking about where you put the breaks in and those different things. So I'm going to also say it's not possible to please all teachers or community with any decisions that we make. I read the surveys and look at all the different choices, and there are many, but we try to do our best as a committee to come with the best academic calendar and look at all those things, professional development for teachers, time off, time in school, and several different things. Also, where the 9 weeks end. Some years we've ended up with a jumbled calendar where you have a 9 weeks that's actually 10.5 weeks or 12 weeks and those different types of things. Also, in the fall or in the wintertime, we have those Carol Birdsong days that happen sometimes where we're out of school for inclement weather. So we have to caution ourselves for not putting too many days off close together as well. Just want to say. So I would encourage the board to support the calendar presented to you tonight by our calendar committee. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Webb.
So I want to share as well just a quick summary of the calendar. You'll see in the calendar proposal that we have a first day, half day on a Friday. The feedback that we received from elementary, middle, and high is the effective use of that half day and being able to adequately plan for the large number of students who enroll in Williamson County the first day of school, and actually between the first day of school and Labor Day, the large number of students that we have enroll. But starting on a half day gives us the weekend to adjust, especially at the high school level, adjust master schedule to balance courses and to make sure that we have as many changes and balancing of classes that we can do over the weekend, so the first full week of school has minimal impact on changes. The calendar before you has a 2-day fall break for teachers and a 5-day fall break for students. That includes a Thursday, Friday, a weekend, and a Monday for students. The Monday after fall break is a professional development day that falls at the end of the quarter. To Carrie Vaughn's point, the TLA department and David Allen and our professional learning leaders have made that recommendation to put a day of professional development at the end of the first quarter for our planning purposes as we go through the year. This year's calendar also has the election of 2020 on November 3rd. We've allocated that to be a district professional development day. We do have 14 sites, school sites that serve as polling locations, so we will distribute our professional development away from those polling sites. This calendar has a full week Thanksgiving break. We took into consideration the feedback from the schools that we received, and the feedback that we received as a committee is that when looking at a week-long Thanksgiving break versus a week-long fall break, many folks look at those 2 weeks as Thanksgiving as required or obligated travel as families for Thanksgiving and a holiday versus fall break, which is more luxury travel. It also includes a full 2-week winter break for students and faculty alike. Our first semester ends on a half day in December, right before that 2-week winter break. The calendar includes a full week spring break, as well as days off for Labor Day, Martin Luther King Day, and a spring holiday in April. We have three half days, including the first day of school, the end of first semester, and the end of second semester. And we ask that you approve the calendar as proposed.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. And Mr. Chair, one last thing before I finalize this with a recommendation, and of course, open the floor to a motion and discussion, is there's no perfect calendar. And the discussions that we've had, there is inevitably somebody who disagrees with something on the calendar and prefers something different. And so I respect the work of the calendar committee, and because of the structure we have in asking them to make that work, to put that together for us, I am going to recommend their recommendation. But I wanted to let you know one final thing. One of the things we hear from our community is they like to hear this as early as possible. This is actually on our annual agenda for November, but because this committee did its work, we are taking it to you this month in the hope that we can at least inform our families just that little bit earlier for next year. And we recommend approval.
Thank you. Would anyone like to make a motion? We have a motion from Ms. Emerson, and we'd like to second the calendar. We have a second from Mr. Welch. Any further discussions on this? Okay, we have Ms. Cleveland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've always been an advocate of a full week fall break, full week Thanksgiving. And as a school board member, I always seriously consider the recommendation when deciding to on the staff recommendation when deciding to vote because of their daily involvement in the school system, their expertise, and the educational impact those decisions may have on the students across the county. I have a great respect for the WCS staff and the committee that put this calendar together. However, I believe that the school calendar is more of a personal preference. Based on board discussions, this preference varies from district to district, and I respect and value each board member's opinions. As a representative of District 7, I have a responsibility to listen to the parents and teachers within my district. Over the past years, I consistently had heard overwhelming opinions that the parents to have a week off at fall break and Thanksgiving. This is more than just a vacation that they're asking for. The purpose is to give the students a mental health break from the social and academic pressures after each of the grading periods. The colleges that I've looked into that have the 2-semester spring-fall calendar have approximately a 4-week break. I'm assuming this is a lot because of those students have to go home and see their families. But could it be also the intent for the teachers and students' well-being? The academic pressures of our juniors and seniors take on, whether it is through themselves or through outside sources, have been compared to be equivalent to the freshman year of universities. We are fortunate that our teachers prepare our students for the first year of college. Parents know their children and see the effects of stress, not the school personnel. Unfortunately, I'm also receiving calls from elementary schools with the same kind of stress. There are many stress factors in today's world upon our children. I'm just hoping that a week from school after each grading period is just one small step to help cope with the stress, have downtime, and come back to school ready to be the students they aspire to be. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Mr. Cash.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to say that thank you to the committee and Carrie Vaughn and explaining in great detail and looking out for all the stakeholders in the big picture. I think this is fair, and the hard work that goes into this, I don't think people realize everything that comes into play here, and Carrie explained it beautifully. I'd like to say another thing about the calendar is Veterans Day. Every year we hear about the fall break. Every year we hear about Veterans Day. I, for one, feel that the school is opening up to veterans in this calendar. They're being invited in. There's emails going out already. I feel like if the schools can celebrate Veterans Day and celebrate those folks that have put their life on the line so that we have the freedom we have today, and explain to the kids and really do it up. I encourage the schools to, play your bands, play your choir, sing the songs, sing the patriotic songs, and really honor those veterans for what they did. Because if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be sitting here making decisions. Somebody else would be making them for us. And I just feel that if it's kept in the school on Veterans Day, 41,000 kids are going to hear about veterans. If we take the day off, maybe a third will go to a parade or something. The rest will be playing on computers or whatever. But 41,000 students, if it's done right, will be leaving class on Veterans Day knowing the importance of a veteran. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Galbraith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Webb, just wanted to thank you for pulling this, giving us the information that you provided today, and it's great. And what they sent us, and I'd posted this on my Facebook page, but was a look back, because a lot of people are asking, say, what's the attendance like before and after the breaks, and we actually have a large amount of data over the years, and they went back and looked at our calendar back to 2000, 2001, at which time we had 3 days of Thanksgiving break and 1 day of fall break, and then over the years that the Thanksgiving break stayed the same. We added a day or two of fall break. The fall break has gone back and forth from 2 to 3 days over the years. In 2011 and 12, we added the 5th day of Thanksgiving. And then the 2017, 2018, the fall break was predominantly at 2 days. 17, 18, we added it 3 days. It's gone back to 2 for the last 2 years, and now we're proposing to go back to 3. And so I guess I submit that we're changing as part of the community, and I think we're responding to the community, recognizing that everybody is changing their expectations. Our board vision has changed, and our strategic goal talks about the whole child. We are more focused about mental health and its impact in not only the academic but also the social and emotional well-being of the children. And the teachers, for that matter. But I do want to recognize that we are the only district, assuming that everybody stays pretty consistent on their calendars. So around, we've stayed relatively consistent despite this change. They're just tweaks here and there. FSSD has stayed consistent in having their full week of fall break and full week of Thanksgiving, and I guess I'm just proposing that we continue that. And I think the people in Williamson County, they see all of the other school districts in our area with the full week of fall break, and it makes so much sense to me, and I hope that we continue to move in that direction. But I guess one thing I heard Carrie say it last year, and Lee, you said it this year, but you said that you sought feedback from the schools. I'm just interested to see in what form that feedback was sought, because I've had teachers respond to me saying, "Hey, why are they doing this? This is not what my teachers that I talk to are saying." Everybody's saying that and everybody used the word lightly. This is just what they're telling me. I recognize it's not everybody, but what kind of format was that feedback sought?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Galbraith. So we collected feedback from the school principals. Elementary was sent to Denise. Middle and high feedback was sent to me. Different principals collected that feedback in various ways, some as a complete faculty, some from their building leadership committee. But they all sent feedback in regards to the current calendar, things that they thought had worked in the past, things they'd like to see happen in the future. We saw all kinds of feedback come our way. We had some who requested a full week, some that requested a full week at Thanksgiving and at fall break. In fact, we drafted a calendar for our discussion that included that. I would say definitely more feedback came from the schools for a full week Thanksgiving and a partial week fall break than for the full week at both, but we considered both calendars in our conversations. When we drafted the full week at fall break and the full week at Thanksgiving, it certainly pushed our start date back several days, of course 3 days if we want to go to a full week. And based on the calendar, the adjustments that we'd have to make to the calendar, we simply felt that it wasn't the best instructional calendar for our students this year to have that full week at fall break and Thanksgiving. We hear overwhelmingly from our school principals and from the teacher feedback that WCA heard is that continuity is something that's difficult to obtain when we continue to have breaks throughout the first semester. So we heard that feedback, drafted the calendars, and the feedback that we brought to you today is the calendar we proposed.
Thanks. Thank you for that. I guess I would, the last time 3 years ago that we sought feedback was, I don't consider it a scientific study at all. But the feedback that we got, the reason I asked is the feedback that we got from teachers was that in the choices that they were given, the week that represents the current calendar versus a week that represents a full fall break and Thanksgiving break, despite starting a full week early and starting on the previous half day Friday, received 60% of the. It was 60 to 34, and 5% wanted to go after Labor Day. And so, but it was pretty, I mean, 2 to 1 roughly. And so that's the feedback that I have. And so I guess if we're going to, and if we're going to seek, if we're going to seek the feedback from the teachers and the principals, then I would like to seek formal feedback from the parents as well, because this is one, as Sheila said, this is the one issue that really touches families and impacts their lives as much as anything. And so I just want to be respectful of that. So if we are having a formal or informal information gathering, I'd like to make sure that the parents are included in that as our partners in the education of our kids. So, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Garrett.
Yes, two quick things. First of all, I'm very appreciative of FSSD having a seat at the table for this calendar development. My district is 50% FSSD and 50% Williamson County Schools, so that's important in our area. And secondly, the second thing I was going to talk about was Veterans Day, but I believe one of our two veterans on the board, Mr. Dan Cash, sort of addressed what I was going to ask about being in school on Veterans Day and what happens on Veterans Day in our schools. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Welch?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad Dan said that. You know, as a veteran myself, as the son of a veteran, as the grandson of a veteran, of a great-grandson of veterans, you know, 4 generations of men in my family all serving. I will say personally, I don't have any issue with us having school on Veterans Day. I think we handle it very appropriately, and I am looking very forward to going to Hunter's Bend on November 11th myself and speaking to the class there. I've been invited about the sacrifice that veterans make. So when we get that feedback, respect people's ability to disagree, but personally speaking, only for myself as a veteran, I don't have an issue with that, and I think we handle it very appropriately. This is kind of the argument we have every year on the fall break versus a week versus the 3 days. I think it's going to be 5 days in a row that we're given this particular year. Kind of want to point out a couple things with it. Every year we have the calendar committee, and every year it's made up of a combination of teachers, administrative staff, and parent representatives, going back years and years. And Mr. Vaughn, thank you very much for you and your fellow teachers' participation on that. It's very much a thankless task that you're being asked to do additional hours without any compensation. So it is very much appreciated to have your voice there representing our WCS staff. But the point being, with that is we've had this composition for years and years and years, different individuals, but representative of each of our members of our school community, and every year they've come back with the same recommendation. So it's not like this is one group of individuals saying this. This is different people consistently with the same parameters that we've given them of prioritizing academics that have made the same decision consistently. I don't think we need to rubber stamp any decision that we make, but I think if we do make changes, we need to demonstrate that it's an academically superior difference that we've made in this, and I don't know that we've met that threshold. I went and I counted the days here. Went from October 8th to November 29th, kind of bookmarking what we've got leading into Thanksgiving, leading into fall break and then ending with Thanksgiving break. And that came out to 53 days total. That's 7.5 weeks of the academic calendar. During that, we have 29 academic school days. Those are days on, which is about a third of the school year. So a significant chunk. And we've got 24 days off. So I want to repeat that. It's 29 academic days and 24 non-academic days in that period. If we take the 2 additional days on that, we're now looking for 27 days academic, 26 days that are 26 days off and only 27 days that are academic. So it's about a 50-50 split. So I have a little bit of a difficulty agreeing with the argument that made that we need it for a mental health day. Because if we do that, we're going to have to take those 2 additional days, we're going to have to take them from 1 of 3 places. It's the only way that we can do it. One is to cut a number of academic days that we have total. I think that's a non-starter. The second is we extend the school year out into the summer break and we cut our summer break shorter. Or the third is we start the school year earlier and we cut our summer break quicker. We get back into school earlier, especially during the hottest time of the year, and that's been something that's been an issue in the past as well when we get parent feedback with that. So, I do agree with you that we want to get feedback and everything else. And I haven't heard a whole lot, to be very honest, about this. I think I've gotten about 3 emails of it. But there's also another segment of the parent community that we haven't heard from, and that segment is those that can't go on vacation. And I get it. I've been on 30A during fall break and sitting there on the beach, and I go, man, it would be nice to have a full week. I've had that moment as well. But let's not forget that segment of our community that's not always heard from as much, that sometimes can't be heard from as much, that have 2 working parents or have a single parent that's working that doesn't have the luxury of going on vacation. And for them, during this time, they have to find childcare. And so when we think about kind of the needs of the parents, let's think about all of our parents, those that maybe aren't as vocal that we forget about as well, who do have a challenge when they have to find childcare for a son or a daughter or what have you for an entire week. And that's a very legitimate issue that we have with that. So while I respect the argument for it, I understand that there is a segment of the community that would like to see that. I'm going to go with the recommendation of our superintendent, the recommendation of the committee that has looked at this holistically. I think they've come back with a wonderful calendar, but I also appreciate the views of my colleagues that have looked at it otherwise. I don't know, Sheila, you started off saying that you were doing this with the best interests of the student in mind, and I don't question that at all. I know that's everything that you do is always with the best interests of the student, Jay, you as well. So respectfully disagree, but certainly don't question your motives at all on that.
Thank you. Ms. Durham?
Thank you. I just wanted to really acknowledge the families and teachers who've reached out directly to me to share opinions, because it definitely, I do read all the emails and I really do appreciate hearing the feedback. And I just wanted to share the top 3 items I did receive feedback on. One was Veterans Day, and we've talked about that a lot today, and gotten feedback on, why Williamson County Schools believes it's a good day to have the kids in school. The second one is the fall break versus Thanksgiving break, and I have probably equal feedback from families, maybe even more so, requesting that we not take as much time, because I guess a lot of the families don't have the childcare, as things have been mentioned. So just wanted to share that, and then also feedback or requests for information about why we have the half days, and I'll just explain that to them as well. So I just wanted to acknowledge that, those 3 things that have come across, because I know some people were really asking for the fall break to be extended. And ultimately, there are as many fors as againsts for the various requests. And in the end, I just really rely on the expertise of the folks here. And I just feel like, as most everyone here on the board, I try to only make decisions that are in the best interest of the majority, and just to do what I feel like I've been elected to do, which is make sure that these students have the best educational experience possible, and that's why families are moving here. So I just wanted to acknowledge everybody and say thanks for reaching out, and thanks to the administration for recommending the best calendar.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address this topic? If not, we're ready to vote. We have a motion, a second, and director's recommendation. Okay, you go ahead then and vote, please.
Your vote is 9 yes, 2 no.
All right, thank you, board. And we have our calendar established for next year. All right, our next item is recommendation to add $100 fee approval for field trips to approved field trip fee list. Mr. Golden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Back in February of 2017, we asked the board to approve field trips at one time under $100, and that was largely because of the scheduling of field trips and some of those small local field trips, and the requirement under state law that every single fee be approved by the board. And you did that. Well, in 2018, 2019, we missed it and failed to ask. And so this memo and this request for you to vote tonight is for you to approve that as a fee, so that we can continue in that process that we started in 2017. It's a corrective action for us, and we recommend approval.
Okay, anyone like to make a motion on this one? I'm sorry, Ms. Garrett, I'd like to second the motion. Second from Mr. Welch. Okay, comments or questions about this? Okay, we have our motion second and director's recommendation then. If you go ahead and record your votes.
Your vote is 11 yes, 0 no.
Okay, thank you. Our next item is our school board code of ethics approval. Mr. Golan, you want to start this one?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The state law requires each board to approve a code of ethics. Historically, this tended to stick just to financial issues, but you all, as a board, for many years have recognized that the scope of your ethical responsibilities is much broader than that. In the board policies, you have actually made a couple of small changes to the code of ethics this year. and you did that most recently. And the law requires you to make an annual approval of the Code of Ethics. So based upon your discussions the last couple of months, I do recommend approval of this year's Code of Ethics.
Okay, would anyone like to make a motion for Code of Ethics? We have a motion from Ms. Cleveland. We have a second from Mr. Hall. If there's any further discussion on this? If this motion passes, we will ask the board members so the public can hear it, so a lot of people don't know what our Code of Ethics is to go around the room and read it, take turns reading one section at a time. But let's first go ahead and record our votes then, please, on this.
Your vote is 11 yes, 0 no.
Okay, thank you. So, board members, if you're willing, I'd like to go around the room and just take a turn and just read one article as we go so everyone in the public can hear what our Code of Ethics is about. So the title of it is Code of Ethics for School Board Members, and the first article is My Relations to Our Students. So if we'd have Ms. Durham, if you could read the first section, please.
Do I need to, okay. I will at all times think in terms of students first, always determining other important things according to how they affect the education and development of students.
I will seek to provide equal opportunities for all students in academics, the arts, and athletics.
May I go ahead? And the second, Article 2, is my relations with our community. In Section 1, it says, I will fairly appraise and support both present and future educational needs.
Section 2, I will represent at all times the entire school community and refuse to represent special interest or partisan politics.
Section 3 is I will maintain open lines of communications with the community.
Section 4, I will refrain from using district resources to actively campaign for any candidate up for elected office.
Section 5, I will refer to other board members, staff, students, and the public with respect, including using social media.
Article 3, my relations to our district employees. Section 1, I will support the employment of those persons best qualified to serve in our district.
I will strive to secure resources that allow our employees to perform with excellence.
Section 3, I will celebrate employee accomplishments and refrain from public critique.
Article 4, my relationships with other board members. I will recognize that authority rests only with the board in official meetings, and that the individual member has no legal status outside of such meetings.
Section 2, I will at all times comply with the Tennessee Open Meetings Act, otherwise known as the Sunshine Law.
Section 3, I will make final decisions only after full discussion of matters at a board meeting.
Section 4, I will respect the opinion of other members and will accept the principle of majority rule.
Section 5, I will attend all regularly scheduled board meetings insofar as possible and become informed concerning the issues to be considered at those meetings.
Section 6, I will work with other board members to establish effective board policies and to delegate authority for the administration of the schools to the superintendent.
Section 7, I will refrain from public critique of fellow board members.
Article 5, my relations with our superintendent. Section 1, I will support full administrative authority as well as responsibility for the superintendent to properly discharge all professional duties.
Section 2, I will support superintendent accountability for working and requiring staff to work within the framework of policy set by the board.
Section 3, I will refer all complaints and concerns to the superintendent.
Section 4, I will refrain from public critique of the superintendent outside board deliberations.
Article 4, my relations to myself. Oh, 6. Not into Roman numerals, sorry about that. Section 1, I will inform myself about my duties and responsibilities and current educational issues by individual study and through participation in programs providing needed information.
Section 2, I will avoid being placed in a position of conflict of interest.
Section 3, I will refrain from using my position on the board for personal or partisan gain.
Section 4, I will take no action that will compromise the board, the district, or administration.
Section 5, I will respect the confidentiality of information that is privileged under applicable law.
Thank you, board members. That is our code of ethics, and the board members have all signed the code of ethics. We've passed it around for their signature, signifying that we all have voted in favor of this and will support this document. So thank you all for reading to us. Our next item is board policies first reading. Mr. Golden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All board members are aware, but I'm not sure the public is aware, that our board has spent the last year or so reviewing all our policies. They've used the TSBA as a benchmark and compared the standard Tennessee policies to what's appropriate for Williamson County. This is largely the last section of that review, so I want to thank those of you on the committee and all board members and staff for the hard work that you've done over the past year in working through that. And I recommend approval for first reading of the policies on the list.
Okay, board members, we're going to be voting on all the first reading policies at once. So it'll be one major vote here. Would anyone like to make a motion for this? Okay, we have a motion from Ms. Emerson, a second from Mr. Cash. They were so excited about our code of ethics that they decided to go.
It can't get any better than that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on the board policies for first reading? Okay, I don't see anybody lighting up on my board here.
Oh, shoot.
You are?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just wanted to thank everybody, Nancy and Dana, and everybody who chooses to come to the policy committee meetings, and I try to make as many as I can, but it's really been it's been great to go through. Most of y'all have never been privileged enough to go to a policy committee meeting, but it's mind-numbing sometimes, and we talk about commas, and Dana hates me, but I wanted to let Dana go ahead and take the opportunity to read through all these policies if you wouldn't. No, I'm just kidding.
We'll be here till
but no, it's been great. It's been a heck of an effort over the last year plus to go through all these policies and clean these things up, and I think we're going to be just having gone through and seen all these having physically touched every one and gotten rid of some ones that don't really apply anymore. I think it's going to make us better equipped to serve and execute them, both from the staff and from the board. So thanks for recommending that we do this.
Dana said her mic doesn't work.
Oh, right.
Okay, is anyone else? I don't see anything else lit up on the board here. Okay, then we have our motion and our second for the first reading on board policies. If you go ahead and record your votes.
Your vote is 11 yes, 0 no.
All right, thank you. The next item is policies for deletion. These are also first readings. Mr. Golden?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Likewise, as we discussed, the policy committee went through these policies and recommended some for deletion. Some of them have aged out to where there is no need. Other elements of these policies have been incorporated into existing policies as we've revamped them. I recommend approval of the deletions.
Anyone like to make a motion on this? Ms. Garrett would like to make a motion for deletion of the policies. Mr. Hall is a second. Any further discussion, comments? Okay, I see none. You have the director's recommendation and a motion and a second. If you'd record your votes.
Your vote is 11 yes, 0 no.
Okay, I'm sorry to say that ends all the items we had for business for tonight. Mr. Golden, you have any final words?
And one last thing that just struck me as we were talking about the calendar. The 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month was the end of World War I. And that's why November 11th is Veterans Day. And I learned that in school, and I will never forget it.
Thank you. All right, this meeting is adjourned.